What is an emotional event?
An emotional event is something that happens. It's something that happens that changes the temperature, the emotional temperature of the scene. So it could be a turning point, or it could, but it doesn't have to be a single moment. It can be what happens in the whole scene. So the whole scene could be an argument, or, well, let me mention Mike Nichols, who I quote a lot in my book, Directing Actors 25th Anniversary Edition. I quote Mike Nichols a lot in the chapter on emotional event because he really, really got it. And he was a teacher himself, and in addition to being a brilliant director. And he said at one time, and I'm going to preface this by saying that I make some adjustments to this dictum of Mike Nichols. I take the liberty. He said, every scene is either a fight, a negotiation, or a seduction. And that's a useful way for directors to kind of get introduced to the idea of emotional event. It's something that big, and they're that different from each other. A fight, a negotiation, seduction, they're different from each other. And that's a helpful way for people to think about it. I actually think that it can be, refined. I was using the example before, an argument between best friends who have never argued before is different from an argument between people who have had many arguments in the past, right? Those are two different kinds of arguments. But it's something that happens between the two people, the two characters in the scene, that changes their relationship. So, and in this, I'm very proud of this chapter 5 in this book. Very proud of the chapter 5 because I finally really, really addressed this question of emotional event. In the first book, the original Directing Actors, which came out in 1996, I mentioned emotional event and I mentioned how important it was, but I didn't really describe it. And over the years that I was teaching after that, and people they were asked to read that book before they came to any of my workshops, and the directors would always say, I love the book, but there's one thing I'm confused about, and it's emotional event. So I kept trying to be clearer and clearer about it. And it's a very slippery topic, It's one of those things, I was in class, I would finally be reduced to saying, if you keep watching me watch scenes and talk about the emotional event, you'll eventually be able to do it yourself. And I thought, well, that's a cop-out. I have to be able to really describe it for them more clearly. And then I did another book in 2003 called The Film Director's Intuition. And I made a stronger attempt to describe what emotional event is in that book, but I still wasn't satisfied, and people still had kept asking about it. So in this book, the 25th Anniversary Edition of Directing Actors, I really went all out. I spent a lot of time trying to explain it from a lot of different points of view, because it's slippery, and so I came at it from different points of view. Like, you could think of it, at the end of the scene, is the relationship closer than it was at the beginning, or is it more alienated than it was at the beginning? That's a simple way to look at emotional event. And some other simple ways are one character hurts the other person's feelings. That's an emotional event. Or one character asks for forgiveness and receives it. That's another emotional event. Or one person tries to pick a fight, and the other person engages. They pick a fight with each other. So that's so there are different ways of looking at it, but and it takes a lot of practice to think about that. What is the event of the scene, and that it's something underneath the plot event.
And so Mike Nichols said there's 3 sort of wants in every scene. It's one to argue.
No. That it's either one of that a scene is either a fight,
sure,
or a negotiation, or a seduction.
Right. So it's one of 3.
That's I mean, it's a. I think he was. It's a very broad thing to say. I mean, one thing that it makes me realize is that you can play fast and loose. That a lot of you would think any love scene is a seduction, right? That would seem automatic, but actually most love scenes are negotiations. So that's an interesting way to do it. You would think that the scenes in Fight Club, where they're having the fights, you would think that those are fights, right? But they're really seductions. So you can, I don't know, you're looking for what's underneath it.
What if a scene does not have an emotional event?
You're going to end up taking it out in the editing room. If it doesn't have an emotional event, it stops the story. So that even scenes that look like a connector scene or an exposition scene still need to have an emotional event. There's no such thing as a scene that's an exposition scene. So I was very lucky with this 25th anniversary edition of Directing Actors. I was very lucky to get permission to use a scene from The Matrix to do my script analysis example, and it's a very short scene. It's like a page and a half, and I think most people would look at it and think it's a connector scene. They're in a car. They've just arrived back to the Matrix, and it's Neo's first visit back to the Matrix. I think they're on the way to see the Oracle. And so it's a connector scene between this, very amazing trip from the Nebuchadnezzar back to the Matrix, and then this amazing scene at the Oracle's office. And but it's of course it's an excellently written script, and I just found so much in it, and so I really felt good about being able to show how something that most people might think of as a connector scene had lots and lots of event in it. Even if the most simplest exposition scene, Shakespeare is full of them. A messenger comes up and gives information to the king, and then goes off. That you could say that the emotional event is that the messenger, they achieves their message, that it raises their stature in the eyes of the king, or it cements their low stature when they're dismissed. You can find emotional event in any so-called exposition scene, and you must.
What are the questions that a director should ask to uncover the emotional event?
Great question. Okay, I go into that a lot. And one way that, and any question that occurs to you, like, why are they here? Why is this? You can always start with, why is this scene in the script? Why do the characters do what they do? Why do they say what they do? I like to always start with mysterious lines. Mysterious lines, very helpful place to start when I'm doing script analysis. So, well, first, I look at just my first impressions, where I honor my first impressions, where I say, and even if it's, this is a scene that looks like a torture scene. One person is beating down the other person. So that would be something I don't like. I don't care for torture scenes. So I would say, well, I got to find something else then, and say, So I honor that. I have that first impression, or I have the first impression that it's a love scene, that these people are falling in love, It's one of those little steps along the way to falling in love. So I honor my first impressions, but then I start looking for mysterious lines, and I make myself find at least 3 in every scene. And first I look at mysterious lines, the ones that bother me, the ones that it's my tendency my first impression, my first tendency is to say, I don't like this line. It shouldn't be here. It should be rewritten. I don't like it. And then make myself come up with 3 different ways of understanding it. Make myself. And by the time I've done that, I'm fine with the line. I no longer want it to be taken out, which is a very, very good thing to use for if you're directing television. If you're directing television, you don't get to change lines or take them out if you don't like them, not without permission, certainly, and you're very unlikely to get it. So it's very, very useful to be able to find a way to justify any line that at first you don't like. Of course, I have a theater background, so that's how I learned that, because if you're doing a Tennessee Williams play, you didn't say, well, I don't like this line. Can we change it? No, you don't get to change it. So you have to find a way to justify it. It's finding a way to justify the line. So I start with the lines I don't like, and then I start with the lines that I love. Sometimes there are lines that I love, and then I make myself still look for subtext to them. Instead of saying, this line is so good, I just have to say it, and it's, going to be wonderful, I still make myself look for, what are 3 different realities that could be behind it. Now, I should probably give you an example, huh?
Yeah, I would just real quick, what would make you not like a line?
Well, I was thinking about this morning, and I was thinking about, because, I decided to think of something from Shakespeare because, we don't have to worry about copyright if I use some lines from Shakespeare, right? So I was thinking about the to be or not to be speech, which goes, to be or not to be, that is the question, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. Well, this is a line that I both love and hate. The line about take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. I mean, I love this line. It seems to so perfectly say something about the state of mind of suicide ideation. That the only there's nothing. I have nothing I can do. I can't. I'm powerless to change anything, and even my efforts to change. I'm powerless. But if I look at it in a very word by word kind of way, take arms against a sea of troubles. That's a mixed metaphor, right? Why did he do that? This is Shakespeare. He doesn't have to mix his metaphors. He can do anything. So why did he do that? You don't like the idea of shooting bow and arrow into the waves? That's the image that comes up when I think about it. The sea of troubles. It's like the waves crashing over the shore. You take a bow and arrow and well, actually, as soon as I say that, I say, yes, everything that we do in life is as futile as shooting bows and arrows into the waves. So, well, automatically, I like the line better. But then I say to myself, well, make myself come up with 2 more. And another one that of course comes to me is that, the mixing of the metaphors is a product of his disordered mind. That sometimes I think about Hamlet a lot, actually, and sometimes, especially in the last week, because I went to see that movie, The Northman, which is based on the same legend, the same story as the Shakespeare used to base the story of Hamlet, and. Anyway, sometimes I think that Hamlet, Shakespeare's Hamlet, was had early onset schizophrenia, brought on by trauma, and that his mind really is, and that this speech, which it's so beautiful that you think it all makes sense, but it really doesn't, and it's not meant, that it doesn't make sense because his mind is going from image to image. Anyway, that's I just did two. I'm going to stop because sometimes I talk too long about Hamlet. So I'll just stop there. Come up with at least two, three if you can, different ways to understand a line that bothers you,